School is out, summer is here, means only one thing. We have post-spring football to talk about. Justin and I will break down our Big 12 post-spring rankings and what that means heading into the 2025 football season. This is the Iowa State Fan Perspective.
Snaps good, holds good, kick on the way by Conrady, end over end, and it is good! Kyle Conrady hit a 54-yard field goal, and Iowa State leads at 20-19! Oh my goodness!
What's up, everybody, and welcome back into another episode of the Iowa State Fan Perspective. This is post-spring football. My name is Jake, as always, joined by my co-host, my brother, Justin. We have a lot to get into tonight. Hope you guys have enjoyed a fun and safe long weekend. We have Big 12 post-spring rankings. The transfer portal is finally closed. We are basically in the heart of preview season is what we call it here at Play the Fight Song. We're going to be breaking down all 136 teams here at Play the Fight Song. But tonight, we're talking America's Conference. We're talking Big 12. Justin, how are we doing? We haven't touched base in about a month. Are we ready to talk some Big 12 football?
Yeah, doing good. It has been a while, although I'd say the entirety of May kind of flew by. I feel like ever since the end of the season, the entirety of the spring, at least for me, kind of felt like it was dragging on. And I'm excited for summer to be here. I'm excited for the season to get started soon. And I'm excited to at least just start talking about next season and start looking forward to the preview season.
Yeah, if you guys are tuning into the show for the first time, please subscribe, like the video. We are trying to grow this audience Iowa State based and as always, college football based. We welcome all college football fans here at Play the Fight Song. We do live weekly shows each and every single week. Again, we cover all 136 teams. And our Iowa State Fan Perspective is always brought to you by our friends at No Rivals. ShopNoRivals.com. Use the code PTFS for free shipping on all of the best collegiate hats in America. Actually, No Rivals is hooking us up with a couple of shirts, so we're excited to show those off here in the hopefully next coming weeks or so. But we appreciate those guys as always. Iowa State fans continue to stay patient. Our friends at No Rivals, they're doing their work just like they do for all of your teams. So appreciate those guys. Justin, before we get into our post-spring Big 12 rankings, we're going to be breaking it down into tiers. You are making up these tiers, and I don't know about them. So I am excited to do that. We're going to be basically live reacting on this show and where I think all of these teams lie. But before we get into that, again, we haven't touched base in about a month. We have some catching up to do. We have some house cleaning stuff, and it starts with Iowa State Athletic Director Jamie Pollard and just basically the state of where Iowa State athletics is as a whole, as a unit right now. Because Pollard came out and said, not only in a recent podcast, but also in a couple of media interviews as well, he has been, what's the word, Justin? Very, very blank and very bold with what he said, and he's not sugarcoating anything. Basically, he said Iowa State financially right now doesn't have the strength and numbers to compete and to stay in the state of college football in the Big 12 for, I don't know, the next decade unless things are changed. What was your first takeaways from Jamie Pollard?
Yeah, it's weird to me for as good as position that Iowa State as a university and the athletic programs have been, at least right now, I'd say it's kind of like the peak of where Iowa State athletics have been. The public positive review rate of Jamie Pollard, I feel like could not be lower than it is right now. And I can see that from some reasons just because of kind of how negative he's been. But isn't that kind of what we want from our athletic director, to be honest with us?
Be transparent.
I kind of like the authenticity that he's shown over the last couple of months, for good or for bad. And it makes me think, do you think this is an issue with just Iowa State, or I have a hard time believing how negative this has been, that it's just an Iowa State issue? And do you think Jamie's just been one of the only guys who's been transparent where the other athletic directors have kind of kept silent during this time?
Yes, 100%. Pollard, he's never afraid to say what's on his mind. You will never get a Jamie Pollard criticism from me. I think Iowa State couldn't have survived with what Jamie has done with his hirings and just some of the moves that he's landscaped throughout this new era of college athletics. I think it's a little bit of fear mongering. Basically,
Absolutely.
if you didn't see it, he went on a podcast, and I'm sorry that I can't remember the title of the podcast. I want to give credit to where it's due, but he's basically saying the next 2 years, Iowa State has a reserve, has a savings account, if you were to say, to get them through this new revenue sharing landscape and just all of the NIL stuff that Iowa State and everyone has to deal with right now. But he says basically after 2 years, it's going to run out, and we have to find streams of revenue somewhere. And he doesn't think Iowa State is doing basically a good enough job right now to maintain this success and momentum that they have built through just their athletic programs, specifically the football team, the basketball teams, and obviously some other sports there as well. He said essentially, if we don't keep this up and start to find different streams of revenue, Iowa State will be an FCS team. And yes, he did say that. He basically said Iowa State will be an FCS school.
He said we'd be no different than you and I.
I mean, take that for what
Yeah.
it is. He's pretty blank. I don't believe it. I think Iowa State's just fine. I think the fan base cares enough. No, we will never have enough money to compete with the big boys right now, but you hope this revenue sharing bill that maybe gets passed in July kind of helps level the playing field. But if you know anything about this show, if you guys have listened to us, we're a little skeptical about that because teams with more money are always going to find ways to spend. It always has been. It always will be. Any other thoughts, Justin, on that? Or I'm not too concerned about it.
Yeah, I just feel like I feel like I speak for a lot of Iowa State fans here, kind of getting sick of the fear mongering that you talked about, which it's a real concern and something that needs to be addressed. But like we've talked about, we haven't had as much success as we've had, like specifically with like our basketball and football programs that we have right now. And instead of trying to like fear monger people and to be like, hey, we need to be doing more so we can keep this level of success up, I wish this wasn't all happening at the same time so we could appreciate a little more what's going on right now. I think is the biggest gripe. But just like we said, I still feel like we've got the right people in place to make the decisions as the college football and college just sports landscape continues to change. And if some of those bigger programs decide to end up one day becoming more of like a semi-professional aspect of where things are going, I don't think Iowa State would be the only one getting left behind, kind of like they're making it sound right now. So I don't really think it's as doom and gloom as people are saying, but it is something to still be touched on, especially in these changing times.
Not only Iowa State related, but I feel like that topic specifically in the college football world has been brought up the last couple of days. I know Josh Pate, big college football media guy, went on his show and said that he feels like at least the essence of a Saturday in college football still feels relatively the same, even though we're going through a lot of ugly changes right now within the sport. And some people are very brash with their opinions, saying that's not true, that the Saturdays don't feel the same anymore. I'm more on the side of Pate. At least last year, it felt like to me, just specifically Iowa State related, and as a college football fan, the tailgates felt the same, the excitement felt the same. Once you kicked off, the games mattered in different ways. You know, we have a new playoff now, and whether you agree with it or not, you're still playing for something that you were, and some of the expectations have changed a little bit as far as fan bases are concerned. A lot more fan bases are like, it's 12 team, it's playoff or bust. I think some fan bases still have bowl games that are important to them. I think Iowa State winning the Pop-Tarts Bowl last year was still a big deal. Was it the
Oh, yeah.
ultimate? Was it the ultimate achievement? No,
Felt
but
like it.
right now I feel like it's in a good spot. What do you feel as far as that, Justin? Since let's circle it back to just college football
Yeah.
specifically.
I think that's well said. I mean, Saturdays still feel the same and there's still that passion there, but expectations are changing. And that's kind of just college football as a whole. And I think instead of getting so caught up in the minute details of the change and just kind of embrace the change and know that things aren't always going to stay the same, keep bringing that passion every day, keep bringing those opinions that like we're doing and most fan bases do. As long as that passion and that interest is still there, I mean, Iowa State's going to be just fine. So
Let's round it out with the last topic before we get into our post-spring rankings. straight seeding in the college football playoff. I think that's really why this conversation started throughout the landscape of the fan base. Are you on board with straight seeding? Are you glad they changed it? Is it good for the Big 12? What do you think?
I am on board with it. Whether I don't really think you can say it's good for the Big 12 because it kind of is pandering to the Big 10 and SEC in this situation, but I still think it's better for the sport because if you're going to have a playoff, I think it's best to have um, the teams seeded in the correct ways instead of just giving handouts to teams, whether that's going to benefit the Big 12 or not. Boise State and Arizona State probably shouldn't have got buys last year, as well as they played in their games. They did hold up well. I'm not saying like there's a big gap between the teams and the conferences. Like I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole, but I think it should be seeded the best teams, and that gives more value to the regular season, I think, because it makes the games matter so you can get the correct seeds. But I know me and you have touched on this. I think this is going to give a pathway for Big 12 teams to get home playoff games and have very realistic chances of winning those games and giving themselves a better shot at showing how good they can be. And I think that's going to be a good thing for the conference. I know me and you have touched on it, just thinking of like what a December home playoff game and Jack Trice could mean for the state and for the fan base. I think that is something that could be really exciting to look at, which really wouldn't have been a case without this reseeding.
See, that's where I went. I said this last week on our live show for Play the Fight Song. I said, I'm going glass half full approach on this in that I am okay with, say, Arizona State not getting that auto bye. Like, I could care less that they're going to be a 4 seed playing in the Peach Bowl. I want to see them host a playoff game. I want to see them host a playoff game with, so say, like last year's 3rd or 4th best SEC team, Tennessee. I would love for Tennessee to go to Tempe and try to win a football game there. I think it's much better for the conference. I think it's cool. I think it's a great opportunity for these programs in the Big 12 to host a playoff game. Like South Bend last year hosting that night game on Friday night to kick off the season or to kick off the playoff was phenomenal. Like they tailgated all day. It was a super big deal. I think there are so many Big 12 schools who would love to do the same. And there might be some, pessimistic fans in the Big 12 that say, we don't, well, what if we lose to Tennessee at home if we're Arizona State and we're the 6th seed? Fine, but you got to prove your worth at some point. And if you want to be at the table with some of these big boys, you accept the challenge and you want an SEC school to come to your home turf and you try to defend it and you think your team's good enough anyways. So,
and I think guys like us, I mean, guys who kind of like the way college football used to be looking at the playoff, it's not all national championship or bust for us. And it's not just about the playoff, it's about the full season. And yeah, so you'd rather just get a handout to say you made it to the second round of the playoff for free when you didn't play a game and get a bye, other than if you're not that good, you can go out and earn that win, get another home game or maybe a road game and experience that for your fans instead of just getting the free bye to the second round. And if you're good enough to get a bye, like say Arizona State goes undefeated
this year, they still could be. They definitely could be. Yep.
Yeah. But they'd have to go out and earn it, and that's something that I'm fine with.
Absolutely. Well said. All right. Let's not waste no more time because I think we have a lot to get to. Before we do all that, before we get into our Big 12 post-spring rankings, again, like the video, subscribe to the channel, guys. We are so close to 900, and we're trying to get to 1,000 before we kick off Farmageddon in Ireland in late August. So we appreciate everybody tuning in. If you guys would just subscribe to the channel and grow this community, take it off even more. So we appreciate you guys. Again, shopnorivals.com as well. Use the code PTFS for free shipping. All right, Justin, the main point of tonight's show, we have to do our post-spring Big 12 rankings. I think they've changed a little bit just because there are still some teams within this conference that have gone out in the portal and acquired some big pieces. Some teams have lost some big pieces since the winter portal, and I think we have kind of changed it as well. How this is going to work, Justin? Do you kind of want to explain what we're doing, or how do we we want to break this down. Talk about your tiers a little bit.
Yeah, so instead of just ranking teams 1 through 16, kind of made like a group of tiers to put teams that are similar in a areas of category that will help us compare, I think, a little better. And to be completely honest, I was pretty blunt with some of my tiers names. I didn't really just make it like an A through F or something like that. I kind of tried to give like a brief summary of
Yep.
what those teams could be, just to help drive conversation and help us compare some of the teams around it. I think it's a little more efficient that way.
I think it's a little more fun too, rather than just saying, "All right, these are the bottom tier teams." No, let's
Yeah.
actually give a purpose to some of these teams, because if we have all 16 fan bases joining tonight, we care about all of your teams. We care about all of your programs, not just the Cyclones, but we try to take the rosy red glasses off for a little bit and give an honest prediction. So,
Yeah.
Justin, start with your bottom tier. We're gonna start
Yeah.
with the bottom tier, go to the top, and I'll tell you where I
And
think these are going.
And before I start, like, obviously, everyone knows this is the Big 12. It's still May. Things can change, and this is probably the most unpredictable conference in the country because what last year Arizona State was projected to be one of the bottom two
Dead
or three
last?
teams,
Yep,
and
pretty much.
then you're not going to find a site this year that doesn't have them at 1 or 2. And last year, Utah and Oklahoma State were consensus 1 and 2. Both teams finished at the very bottom. So just want to make that known now. So when this comes back to make me look dumb, I just want to preface that. That being said,
Hedge your bets.
my tier name for the bottom of the conference, I've got 2 teams in here, and I've got teams that might look dumb. For number, so do you want me to kind of number
You
them
get
out
you
then? So
you list your 2 teams, and then I'll try to see who falls into that category for me.
at the very bottom, I've got number 16, I've got UCF, and then at 15, I've got Arizona. And those are kind of the 2 that I think are clearly at the bottom of the conference. Um, I don't know if you've got anybody you need to add to that or if those teams you don't think deserve to be in there, but I kind of feel like going into it at this point, those got to be the bottom 2 teams.
I agree wholeheartedly. I'd put Arizona in there. Why would you put UCF in there?
Just because of the mass unknown and kind of the way last year ended. I know they had a lot of hype going in the last season and it went really poorly, which I guess you could use as a positive note going into this year with the lack of toxicity. But seeing as where they're at with their coaching staff now with Scott Frost, the way he kind of left off in Nebraska, not really a huge confidence booster for me. I'm not really sure he's just going to come back into UCF and pick up right where he left off there.
Mhm.
And there's just so much more unknowns with that program than all the other teams in the conference where I just have a hard time putting them really above anybody else.
I'm definitely throwing those 2 in there. That's why I asked. For UCF, the only guy I really think you get back is Najee Kelly, the defensive end. You lose guys like RJ Harvey, Kobe Hudson, Lee Hunter, and Randy Pittman, I believe, are both off to Texas Tech. We'll obviously cover them in a little bit. The other team I'm going to throw in there is Oklahoma State.
I
So
figured you were going to do that. And I kind of teeter-tottered there, but they're my sneak peek. They're my 14th team. I just had them in the next tier.
Bill Connolly actually has them as the 12th team in his SP plus, basically returning production ranking. So a little higher than some of these other teams, but I definitely have Arizona, UCF, Oklahoma State in here. Arizona, this team returns quarterback Noah Fafita, but they ranked 114th last year in scoring offense. They only scored over 30 points one time. That was the first game of the year against New Mexico. All 3 of these teams, specifically offensively, have transfer portal guys they need to hit on. And that's why they rank so low in the returning production, because you just never know what you're going to get with some of these transfers. And I think that's the same for a lot of these guys. UCF specifically has like Division II, some low FBS guys that like they were okay, but we still need to see more. And I think that's really what it comes down to. All 3 of these teams are very similar. UCF and Oklahoma State specifically just overhauled in the portal a ton. UCF was coaching change. Oklahoma State was Gundy complaining about the lack of NIL money in the portal. And now they're saying, okay, here's the money. You can use it. Good luck. This is your last chance. That's don't look dumb. That's kind of the way I see it for those 3 teams. So I like that one.
Yeah. And as far as Oklahoma State goes, or I guess you could say all these teams kind of finished towards the bottom of the conference last year. So maybe having a low returning production could be a good thing for them. Obviously, it wasn't really working for them last year. So maybe some fresh faces, especially in like the UCF case could turn some of that toxicity around and give a fresh start to these programs.
Oklahoma State and UCF both have a depth chart offensively where you're like, I have no idea who's actually going to start for this teams. And I'm not sure even the guys actually covering these teams know who it's going to be yet. One thing to note, lastly, 16 guys were brought in the spring portal window to Oklahoma State. I don't love that. I don't love when teams go and bring in a ton of dudes in the spring. It usually means one thing: they didn't love what they saw from their guys in the winter. That's just bird's eye view, what I kind of think. All right, Justin, what's the next one?
Yeah, so that was my teams that might look dumb. This next tier is going to be teams that will probably make me look dumb. So I've got 14 Oklahoma State, kind of that next tier up. And really the only reason I did that is because it may be the end of his career here, but I'm still believing in Mike Gundy. A lot of these like old, really seasoned, really successful college football coaches, I'm not just going to bail on them after one season. 2 years ago, they were the favorites coming into the conference, coming off of like an 11-win season. So while I don't think they're going to end up being a very good team this year, I don't think it's going to be as bad as they were last year. The other teams that I have and the teams that will probably make me look dumb, I've got Colorado at 13, West Virginia at 12, and then I've got Cincinnati at 11.
Hmm. I
And
agree on Colorado.
Cincinnati's the team that I've highlighted that could potentially make me look dumb.
I like that one. I got Colorado definitely in there. Definitely. I'm out on Colorado this year. I really am. And I know some guys have them as a dark horse contender. And I know last year people were pretty either very high on them or very low on them. They made a lot of people look dumb for being very low on them. But you bring back Amari and Miller, Caden Salter, your Liberty quarterback, needs to hit. A lot of different transfers. The defense actually is not the concern for me. It's the run game and the offensive line, which
Absolutely.
again, they've turned around in the portal. It didn't work last year. They didn't have a single guy rush for over 350 yards. And I think he was the one who just transferred out in the spring, if I remember right. One of the worst offensive rushing attacks in the country. And you had Shedeur Sanders. Caden Salter is not Shedeur Sanders. So if you can't run the football this year, I think it's going to be really, really bad. But the defense could be okay. But they're in there for me. I think Houston's in there for me. Might make me look dumb. I don't like this team. I don't really think it's going to work. They bring in the third best portal class in the Big 12, which is the part where they could make me look dumb. Maybe the portal class hits and this team is contending for Dallas in November. I don't think Connor Wigman is the answer. This was one of this team ranked, Justin, dead last among Power 4 teams in scoring offense. They averaged 14 points a game.
Houston?
Houston. They didn't return any starters, I think. They lost a lot of their guys. Impact guys, like skill positions, like Amari Thomas, wide receiver from UAB, and Dean Connors, running back from Rice. Like those are your two guys you're relying on to be like big yardage guys this year. Among Connor Wigman, who's really I don't think has ever proven it against a good defense. So make me look dumb, fine, but I really really don't like that team. And then sure, I'll go West Virginia too. So West Virginia, Colorado, and Houston. You can't bring in 55 guys through the portal and expect to make a bowl game if you're West Virginia. I just don't see it. I love Jaheim White. I love Nico, but man, you're relying on a lot of other things like to work out, and I hate it. I hate it for them. So those are my three teams that might make me look dumb.
Yeah, we already touched on Oklahoma State, who I had at 14, but I'll start then at Colorado at 13. I agree with you. There's just so much unprovenness with this team that I need to see before I can really rank them higher. I feel bad for putting them this low because I've been a Dion believer. I've bet on them to hit their over and wins last couple seasons. So it's hard to say they're going to take a huge step back and drop all the way to 13th in the conference. But like you said, losing Shador, losing Travis, those weren't the only guys that they lost, but those were two guys that they pretty much ran everything through on their offense, and their run game was so abysmal. I have a hard time seeing them just change their philosophy and way they play in one season and having a lot of success. And maybe they will. And who knows? Maybe if you look at the NFL guys and what happened to Shador when he got drafted, maybe replacing him won't be that hard. But I kind of think he was really good, or at least he was at Colorado. And I just think there's just a lot that they're going to have to replace that I need to see first. And then West Virginia, like you said, what did they bring in? So I thought I saw somewhere, was it 55 portal guys? 52 portal guys?
I had it wrong on the notes. It's 52.
Kind of crazy. Kind of makes me want to put him a little lower, but like you said, I do believe in Nico a little bit. I think he showed some flashes last year, so there is a little proven aspect there that he can at least be a starter in this league. And Rich Rod's had a lot of success the last couple of years. I think that was a good hire for him, bring in new juice to that program that I think their fan base is ready to get excited about. So you never really know with what kind of potential that could bring.
I was going to say for West Virginia, like Jack State started slow last year. When Rich Rod was there. These transfer teams always tend to start slow. This could very well happen. This team could start slow, look terrible, and then start to upset teams in late October, early November, and still miss a bowl game. And then you're like, but they figured it out at the end. I like the direction where Rich Rod is going. That can happen. But the fact that I think this team starts off hot in September and gets to a bowl game, that's where I'm skeptical.
Could be a similar situation, but on a better scale to kind of how Houston went last year, where they were really slow to start the year, but at the end of the year weren't necessarily a team you were excited to play against. And then the last team that I have in this tier that I wanted to rank higher, but just couldn't really get myself to do it for whatever reason, kind of based on how they finished up last year, was Cincinnati. I like that they're bringing back Sorsby. I know you're higher on Sorsby than I am. I know his numbers are pretty good. Dual threat guy, can do a lot, but I don't know if it was him or the team around him. I just didn't really have a whole lot of trust in him when it came down to the end of games. Kind of the opposite of how I feel about Rocco, where it's like the beginning of the games where I was like, I don't know, he's kind of just seems to be managing the game, but he just picks it up there at the end. Sorsby does a really good job of managing games, but just not really somebody that I can count on towards the end of the game. But I do like their young coaching staff. Obviously, they got Vite from Iowa State over there, one of the more underrated defenses in the conference. They were a tough out where I could see them upsetting some teams this year and making a jump higher than where I have them.
I'm going to hold off on Cincinnati because I think I might. They should fit in somewhere else, but we'll see what you got. What's the next one?
Yeah, we can flip-flop it a little bit because my next tier is coaches I'd rather not bet against. At 10, this is where I've got Houston. I've got Kansas at 9, and then I've got Utah at 8. And I'll jump in before you go. I'll jump in on Houston right away just because you were already talking about him. The reason that I have Houston this high is like you talked about. They were one of the worst offenses in the country, point period blank. Last year, they were just abysmal on offense. And I know you're not a huge Wigman guy, and I'm not really either, but I just don't really see how it gets any worse for them. I feel like it's got to get better. And like we just talked about, they were a dangerous team towards the end of the season last year. Willie Fritz was really starting to figure out that defense, and I think I think he was one of the most underrated coaches in the country as a whole. And I feel like year 2 got a little more of his guys in there starting to move the program around, and that's just a team that I really got my eye on that I could see making a bigger jump, and they're top 25 in returning production from last year as well. So really kind of getting themselves established under Fritz is not a team I want to bet against.
Okay, for coaches I don't want to bet against, I'm going Utah, and I'm going Kansas. 2 coaches, Lance Leipold, Kyle Whittingham.
Which were the 2 teams I had in there.
Yeah. Oh, you did? Okay, you did. I'm sorry.
I had Kansas and then Utah.
The only reason I said those 2, I'm going to still hold off on Cincinnati. I'm going to wait and see. I'm going to wait and see what the next one is.
You've got Cincinnati above those teams?
I think I do. I think I do for this one. Utah, I know that they were, again, kind of like Houston, one of the worst offenses in the conference, but the defense, this might be the best defense in the conference as far as returning production goes. Like Logan Fano at defensive end, Lander Barton led the team in tackles last year, a linebacker. is it all just like, can the new OC and Devin Dampier, the quarterback transfer from New Mexico, just be like, instead of 110th, can they be 85th? If they can do that, this team's going to be a dark horse. And Kansas, too, I'm pretty nervous about this team, and that's why I have them early. But it's also like, do you really want to bet against Lance Leipold at this point? When he was down and out last year, he kind of turned it around and was one of the hottest teams in the conference in November and late October. You get Jalen Daniels back. Hopefully, he figures it out after he had to bounce back from basically missing an entire year of injuries in 2023. So maybe goes through spring, goes through fall, feels more comfortable. They brought in some big time SEC transfers, Justice Hanley from Texas, a defensive end. And I think it's Bangali Kamara, the linebacker, 4-star from South Carolina. So skepticism, the defense could be shaky again, but if those two hit, this team also could be dangerous. I'm going to wait and see what your next one is before I play Cincinnati, because now I'm getting too far where I got to play Cincinnati somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be easy for you off of my next tier. But I'll jump into kind of breaking those teams down a little bit. As far as Utah goes, me and you pretty much see it the same way. So I don't have a whole lot to add there. I kind of see it the same way as Houston, where that offense was really bad last year, and specifically at quarterback play. Dampier, although wasn't a super prolific passer last season, I think coming in is just going to add a spark and a juice to that team as someone that, hopefully, injuries aside, you can play for the whole season and count on. And just like we said with Houston, really reliable coach, could be one of the better defenses in the entire country over there. For Kansas, I had them behind Utah just because Whittingham and Utah with that home field advantage is not something that I really want to bet against, especially with the defense. That defense gives them something to hang their hat on. With Kansas, there's just a lot of question marks. Not really sure what they can hang their hat on. But like you said, they really turned it on there at the end of last season. And I know they lost Devin Neal, which is a much bigger loss than people are making it seem to be.
Mm-hmm.
That offense still should be pretty good. I mean, Jalen Daniels last year, 1-to-1 turnover ratio.
Not good.
I see him being more consistent this year. May not be a stud and hit the highs that people think he could have been. I think he's shown enough over his 5 seasons that he really isn't that guy, or he hasn't been that guy consistently yet. But that experience and that veteran leadership does provide them value. I think there's going to be a little more consistency this year. They actually have a home stadium. They're not bouncing around to different games, different venues. And there was just a lot of hype on them going into last year, which they won't have to deal with this year, which I also think could provide them more ease and more valuable results, in my opinion.
Okay. What do you got for the next one?
Next tier is one team, and I just have it as BYU.
That's your
I have BYU as their
category.
I have BYU as their own tier. I have them here at 7, just slightly above half, kind of that halfway mark. Probably pretty low for what a lot of people nationally are thinking of them, especially over their history. Kalani Sitake has been pretty consistent there, but I just don't know how much of last year is going to be replicable coming into this season, especially after the recent news with Redsloff. We don't even know who's going to be playing quarterback for them specifically. I think coming off of a lot of the hype of last year, I'm just very weary on this team relative to where most people might have them ranked. And so that's kind of why I just have them right here above the kind of 50% line in their own little tier.
Okay. I'll put my own tier for Cincinnati then, because I got to get them off the board. I'm going to say a team that doesn't get enough recognition, or a team that's just a slept on team within this conference. I think they're the most slept on team within the conference. I don't think that means that they're going to be competing for a top 4 spot. I don't think that necessarily, but that's a team you just can't sleep on when you go. I know Iowa State goes to Cincinnati early October. Just don't think that's a game you can take lightly. I don't think this is a team that you can take lightly. This team ranks last in returning production from Bill Connelly. It is what it is. I like Sorsby. He's going to have to mesh with a new wide receiver room. You lose your top running back, Corey Kiner, and your top receiver, but Joe Royer, really good tight end for them. They bring in Tyree Walker, the Oklahoma and Wisconsin transfer at running back. and you get back Dante Corleone, who should be healthy, with a defensive line that I think is going to be the best part of their defense. So don't sleep on this team. That's where I'm going to throw my own category. I'll hold off on BYU. So what's your next category?
My next category has 2 teams, and I just have it titled the exciting QBs. I've got TCU at 6, and I've got Baylor at 5.
Oh, the exciting QBs. I'm good.
And I mean, if you've got a different tier, you can go ahead, but that's kind of where I landed with these 2 teams too, because there wasn't a whole lot of expectations on them last year, and both had really high powered offense. Both finished the season really strongly. So coming into this year, you could tell me they're going to continue how they finished off last season, and they're going to be one of the top 3 or 4 teams. But I just don't have enough confidence in them just yet. I love their offenses. I love their quarterbacks. I love how they ended last season, but I don't really have enough to have me say, yeah, that's going to be a top 3 team in the conference.
Okay, so I'm going to throw all 3 of these teams in here then. I'm going let me make sure I'm writing in my notes. These are the exciting
Exciting
quarterbacks.
QBs.
I'm going to throw Texas Tech, BYU, and TCU in there. And now let's put an asterisk on BYU with the situation that they currently have. I think this team could be in the bottom 8 if Jake Retzloff comes out that he's not able to play this year. But we'll put an asterisk on it. We'll take it for what it is right now.
For those who don't know, we haven't announced it. I mean, BYU's quarterback from last year, Jake Retzloff, is going through legal issues right now involving sexual harassment or rape or something like that.
Yeah.
So a lot is up in the air with that. That's really all we need to touch on it. So for anybody who didn't know that, that's kind of the situation BYU's going through right now.
I think Texas and Tech and TCU are in the exciting quarterbacks category because I actually don't think Texas Tech is in my top 3 for teams who can win the conference. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that say I'm dumb for saying that. I've been pretty vocal about it on this show that I just don't love. I don't love what they're going to put all together. Texas Tech was one of the most penalized teams in college football. I understand what they're all bringing back. Their offense and defensive line are all portal guys, like big portal guys. So it's got to work out that way. You bring in a guy like Micah Hudson back, who's a former 5-star who left in the winter, comes back in the spring. I don't love where this country. I don't love where the culture's at right now. But Baron Morton is really exciting. If he's healthy, he can get this offense moving, and that's why he's in my exciting quarterbacks ranking. Jake Retzloff, same thing. I'll touch on it briefly. I don't think BYU needs him to be really good to be successful. I think they proved that last year in some games. But when he's at his best, BYU is a very, very good football team, and they bring back a ton of production to back that up. And then TCU, there's not a more exciting quarterback in the league than Josh Hoover. He loses his top 3 receivers, I think. But you bring in a guy like Jordan Dwyer from Idaho, Joseph Manjack, who was the starter at Houston last year. I don't know. I like some of the pieces they have on defense. If Josh Hoover's good again this year and they can run the ball a little bit, I think this team can be a sneaky dark horse. So those are my exciting QBs.
And I know there's a lot of volatility with this conference, especially last year and how the season ended up. But you can kind of look at last year's rankings, how they finished up. You had Arizona State, BYU, Iowa State, Colorado, Baylor, TCU, Texas Tech, Kansas State. It was pretty clearly the top half of the league with the top half best quarterbacks were those top teams. And then if you didn't have one of those top 7 quarterbacks, you were in the bottom. And I think a lot of those guys coming back to this season could provide a little bit more stability. We could see similar results where I'm not sure how the teams are going to finish up, obviously, but I'd be surprised if one of these top 6 teams with these top 6 quarterbacks, barring any injury or something like that, end up dropping out of this area.
Yes.
And I had a question for you. If you had a choice between Josh Hoover or Sawyer Robertson, I know we did our tiers a couple weeks ago on the main pod, but could you talk about those 2 a little bit here?
If you're asking me to pick one or the other, it's Sawyer Robertson. I'm skeptical on TCU. Do you know TCU? I believe they won 9 games. I'm aware, but they only beat, I think, 2 or 3 bowl teams last year. Their schedule turned out to be really, really poor. And on top of that, they still lost to teams like I think they lost to Arizona. Maybe I'm wrong. They lost to somebody, Houston.
Early in the season. But that was one
They
of those
lost.
things where we were talking about how portal teams can kind of start slow. They brought in a lot of new guys last year, and they really
Yep.
started to hit their stride towards the end of the season. They won 6 of their last 7 games.
Correct. But I didn't love the schedule that it turned out to be. It's kind of a wait and see for me. Where like Baylor, I love Sawyer Robertson and what he brings. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in college football. But not to mention, you bring back Josh Cameron and Ashton Hawkins. He's got his 2 receivers back. That's huge. That's something he has over Hoover, who lost his top 3 wide receivers. And then you get back Dominic Richardson, good running back for them. Keaton Thomas led the team in tackles with over 100 last year. But I'm interested to see if the defense can be more consistent for Baylor, or is Baylor going to have to outscore opponents again this year like they did with Texas Tech, where they won like 59-35 or something? If they have to outscore them, I still trust them. I think I still trust them more than TCU. So it doesn't even really matter what the defense brings for Baylor. I think their offense is going to be good enough, and that's because I like Robertson over Hoover.
And one note on Baylor too, they finished the season 8-5 last year. They're 1 win away or 1 loss away, that Hail Mary against Colorado, from putting them in that upper tier of the Big 12. Kind of a fluky loss, but can't really reverse wins and losses like that. They had 1 loss to a non-ranked opponent last year, and that non-ranked opponent was Utah in week 2 when Utah was number 11 in the country. And all of their other losses were to ranked teams.
And DeQuan Finn started that football game. They didn't even really have an answer at quarterback at that time, too, to remember that. So, Justin, I still have Baylor on or available for my last 2 tiers. So, what I want to finish this out, give us your last 2 tiers, and then we'll decide where we put them. As I have 4 teams left. How many? Do you know how many you have left?
I have 4 teams left.
Perfect. Name your tiers first.
So I've got the reliable teams in quotations, hopefully, because I don't know if you can really call anything in this conference reliable. And then I've got the returning champs. And so obviously at my number 1 spot, I've got Arizona State as the returning champs. They're the defending champions from last year, went 11-2 overall, was it? 12-2? Well, like 12-2. And bringing back Sam Leavitt, who's some people are saying is a top 5 quarterback in the country. Could be the top quarterback in this conference. Number 2 in returning production overall. Pretty much bringing back all of their weapons except for Cam Scadaboo from last year's great season. So hard for me to not put them at 1. On my reliable teams, I've got number 4, Kansas State. Number 3, Texas Tech. And number 2, I've got Iowa State. So you can go ahead and do your breakdown first, and then I can touch on some of those teams.
Reliable teams. I'm going to do Baylor, K-State, Iowa State. I think
it's very fair not putting Texas Tech in that too. And I'm going to touch on it, but I kind of had a hard time just not putting them in that upper class right now.
So why you go ahead? Why is Texas Tech a reliable team for you? Because I've listed why they're not for me.
I think the players that they brought in on the lines of scrimmage, offensive and defensive wise, is just going to be, if you're just looking at a talent perspective, is at a such higher level than a vast majority of this conference, where even if their culture isn't as high as I think we think it's going to be, if they've got issues there, they're still bringing back their quarterback from last year, Morton, who we both have a decent amount of faith in. They're bringing back their coach, McGuire, as well, which I'm honestly not as high on, not doing a great job selling this team here. But the offensive defensive line, the level of athletes that they brought in through the portal this year, having the number 1 transfer portal class, they were getting a lot of these players. They were buying some of these guys over a lot of SEC and Big Ten teams who really wanted these players. Like, these are legit guys that I'm just not sure a lot of other teams, specifically like when I was looking at compared to Iowa State, I'm not sure like a lot of teams are going to be able to match up in the trenches that this team can be able to throw out there.
We have never seen, that's what makes Texas Tech so interesting. We have never seen a Big 12 team do what Texas Tech has done this offseason yet in the new NIL era. Since Texas and Oklahoma left, we have not seen a team load up in potential hypothetical talent like Texas Tech has. So that's why it's so interesting and on how this thing could play out.
And it's probably the opposite of reliable until it happens. But I think if it was skill players
Still
or
have a lot
something
coming
like
back
that
for
on
them.
the outside, they still have a lot coming back there, and then they're bulking up on the inside, which is usually a more dependable unit when you've just got great athletes and big guys and just guys who are tough to move and good at moving dudes. I
Yep.
just think that's something that I'm not comfortable betting against right now, especially as an Iowa State fan.
That's a safe bet. For reliable teams, when I have Baylor, K-State, Iowa State, they have all three things in common. They got their coach back, they got the quarterback back. I don't think there's anything more trustworthy than those two factors when it comes to it. And not only that, those three teams all played really good football at different points in the year. Iowa State obviously was a title contender in the Big 12. Baylor won, what was it, 7 in a row down the stretch before losing to LSU. And K-State, is there anybody more reliable than K-State as far as like the ceiling or the floor is so I guess high? The
Yeah,
floor
high
is so
floor.
high for them. So you just trust that Kleiman and Avery Johnson, even if they don't win the conference again this year, I think it's still safe to say they're going to win 8 or 9 games. I just have a hard time seeing that not happening. And then lastly, you have returning champs, and obviously you have Arizona State. I'll just rephrase that and say, high again, kind of like K-State, highest floor in the conference. I think this team has the obviously the chance to run it back and win back-to-back Big 12 titles, but also I just don't see like Oklahoma State from 2 years ago, where you're in the Big 12 title 1 year and then you're the worst team in the conference. Like Arizona State will be top 4 in this conference at the end of the year. I don't know if they'll win it because again, anything can happen in this league. But I'm very confident to say this team will be in contention or will finish top 5, top 4 in this league at the end of the year. So they're the highest floor team for me, and that they're in a category of their own because I think they have one of the best quarterbacks in college football. On top of you bring in Kanye Udo, stud running back from Army, and you bring back a guy like Jordan Tyson, and 9 guys return on the defense. Huge, huge stuff.
Yeah, we could go all day about the hype that Arizona State has right now, and a lot of it's well deserved. So I think we've kind of touched on that quite a bit. I'm right there with you with K-State and Iowa State. As hard as I am on Avery Johnson, I do think he's going to take another step next year, probably bring some of those turnovers and mental mistakes down. If not, who knows what could happen with that team, but they just always have such a high floor and a team that I'm always kind of worried about and always ends up being a really tough out. And the same with goes with Iowa State. I mean, I think obviously biased Cyclone show here. I think you could make an argument that Rocco and Matt Campbell are both top 10 at their coach and quarterback right now in the country. Maybe top 15 for quarterback if you're going to go Rocco. But I do think Matt Campbell's right up there as a top 10
Yeah.
coach in the country. And especially in a conference where nothing's really given, I think having those two guys is more valuable than anything else. I do want to ask you, I know you touched on the Oklahoma State thing and how much of a drop off they had last year. They had such a good season 2 years ago, 11 wins, one of the top 5 teams in returning production. Do you think that could happen with Arizona State? Do you think that could happen with any other team who's kind of projected to be at the top of the conference? I know you might say that with Texas Tech, but it's a little different. They don't really have as much returning production. Could you make a case for an Iowa State, a Kansas State, or you've got Baylor up there to be a team that takes a really
Low
big
floor.
unexpected step back?
No. Iowa State, Kansas State, Baylor, no. I think all of those teams will win at least 6 games. So I don't see an Oklahoma State situation happening there. The 2 teams that I would say that I could see is TCU and BYU. Those are the 2 teams for me.
Kind of where I landed with BYU.
BYU won so many close games last year, and the offense just really wasn't very good. And now, really, with the Jake Retzloff thing, that applies even more to this. But TCU for me is another one I think could have a huge drop off. Just again because of the schedule just played out in their favor last year. They were so one dimensional. We've mentioned it time and time again. If they don't become more multi-dimensional in running and passing the ball, yeah, you're more susceptible to not winning games because people can read your or your offense a little more. So yeah, TCU for me is a team that won 9 games last year. Not as much in the limelight as Oklahoma State was a year ago. Like people aren't talking about like, look how much production TCU
Potential.
brings back. This is a top 2 team in the conference, but still a
Talking
top
playoff
team.
and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
this is a team that I could see not making a bowl game. And then if that were the case, Sonny Dykes, I think, is a guy that's not on the hot seat, but it's getting warm. It's getting warm, and I think he's gotta prove it this year with a top 25 team. I think that's what I see from the outside looking in as far as the TCU fan side of things.
And speaking of teams who won a lot of one-score games last year, not really something I want to talk about, but so did Iowa State. A lot
Yep,
of really
I
close
agree.
games last year, and I know now the draft has passed us, we were the team that had the most players go in the top 3 rounds out of all of the Big
Yep.
12, losing a lot of really talented guys from last year. I know we talked about how dependable Rocco and Campbell are. That being said, do you see any situation here where things could go south, where they could end up dropping a couple spots and be around that 500 mark this upcoming season? Because their win total is only 7.5. I mean, we
Yes.
obviously talk really high about them, but their win total is only 7.5.
I think there's a difference between what Oklahoma State did 2 years ago and Iowa State just going 7-6. Now, the sky might be falling for some fans in this fan base if Iowa State goes 7-6 this year. I think that would be a very big disappointment to some fans. I'm slow to say that because I think Iowa State's got a super tough schedule. And Iowa State could be like, what they go in 1-score games last year? Like 6-1 or
Yeah.
7, something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
They could still go 3-3 and have a decent year. Like I trust Iowa State to win 1-score games with the quarterback they have because when they get the ball last, he's proven so many times to go down the field. But maybe the season's a little weird and he finishes on the wrong side of the ball and they lose a couple of those. And Iowa State does go 7-6, and that would be fine. Some people would really be pessimistic about that, but again, Iowa State's not going 3-9. It ain't happening, especially with a lot of they do bring back so many pieces. They're going to be in these 1-score games again. They might not win them all again, but I think they're going to win at least half of them just because I trust what they have.
The one piece that concerns me is we are losing a lot of proven production in the secondary, and like I touched on, a lot of the top end teams in this conference are going to be confident with the ball at the end of the game because of their quarterback situation, just like we are. So,
Well,
going to need to see a lot of defense.
let's just hope we have the ball last.
Yeah,
Not them.
that too.
Okay, let's round it out. That was good. That was a lot of fun. For those who've tuned in the entire time, we appreciate you guys joining us and tuning in the middle of May. If you guys would subscribe to the channel before you head out, like the video, comment down below your thoughts on our rankings. We really appreciate it. But we will round it out. Here's what I got for my side, and Justin, you can say yours when I'm done. So for these teams could look very dumb category. I have UCF, Arizona, Oklahoma State. These teams that could make me look dumb category. Colorado, West Virginia, Houston. The coaches I don't bet against or don't want to bet against. Utah and Kansas. I have Cincinnati all by themselves as a team that's just under the radar, doesn't get enough appreciation, or just maybe isn't getting talked about enough. The exciting quarterbacks category, I have TCU, BYU, Texas Tech. Reliable teams, I have Baylor, Kansas State, Iowa State. And then the highest floor team I have are defending champs and Arizona State.
So listening to that there, I mean, we've got a lot of similarities, except for you've got Cincinnati higher than me. Is there any team, one specifically, that's kind of in that bottom 6 for you, like 16 through 10? If you had to pick one, who do you think you would pick that you would say would end up in the top 5 this year?
Well,
Kind of your
I
bottom
think
10.
it's got to be Colorado.
Okay.
Just because of I think their defense is actually going to be good this year. I really do. The defensive line will be good. They bring in Jaheim Otis, a Alabama transfer. They get DJ McKinney back, really good corner. If the offense is still okay and Salter, connects with Amarion Miller, some of the transfers hit, maybe they run the ball a little bit more, easily they could crack the top 10, maybe into the top 5 or whatever. But that's a unit that I trust that still has the most talent. And their coach is like Deion's going on year 3. Like I trust it out of those bottom 6 teams.
That's fair. For me, it would probably be Houston. I'm not a huge supporter of Wigman, but I do feel like that defense is going to be really stingy. And I think Willie Fritz is a guy that we didn't talk much about last year who is going to be in that conversation for one of the best coaches in the whole nation again this year.
I don't blame you for not wanting to bet against Willie Fritz. That's a good point. Justin, round us out. Give us, remind us what your categories are before we get out of here.
So I've got teams that might make me look dumb, Arizona and UCF. Teams that will oh, no, those are teams that might look dumb,
Yeah,
Arizona and
Arizona,
UCF.
UCF.
Teams that will probably make me look dumb, Oklahoma State, Colorado, West Virginia, and Cincinnati. Coaches I'd rather not bet against, Houston, Kansas, and Utah. I've got BYU by themselves. I've got exciting QBs as TCU and Baylor. I've got the reliable teams as Kansas State, Iowa State, and Texas Tech, and then I've got Arizona as the team to beat at the top.
Arizona State.
Arizona State. Yep.
We don't. I don't think. Like the floor could be
Arizona and Arizona
low
State
for Arizona.
are the separators there at 1-16.
Opposite sides of the spectrum in the state of Arizona. So
Yeah.
one fan base is on an all-time high, one's on an
Hey.
all-time low.
Brett Brennan year 2. Who knows?
Could you imagine that? Imagine the flip that we've had than a year ago. Like Arizona was projected like top 4 for the Big 12 last year. Arizona State was dead last. And then now this year it's completely flipped. It's just
That's why
crazy.
like when I try to look at it, I'm like, who are these teams that like we're obviously talking about that we're not mentioning, that like a top team that's going to do bad and like a bad team that's going to do good. But I do think there is going to be a little more consistency this year, like I touched on, because of like those top 7 quarterbacks.
Yep.
I think all those guys returning could make this conference a little more less volatile this year compared to last season.
I've said before, I think this will be the most boring year in the conference, and that could be a good thing. Maybe we'll get 2 teams into the playoff.
Yeah, let's just repeat last year's conference title game. I'm cool with that.
I think that would work for a lot of people who tune into this show. But if you're not an Iowa State fan and you guys are tuning in this show, we appreciate you guys more than you know. Again, subscribe to the channel. Before we head out of here, guys, preview season is almost upon us. We're going to deep dive into every single team, specifically in the Big 12, when we do our previews this summer, and then we're going to do Big 12 title predictions. Justin and I will get you guys covered for all things Iowa State in the Big 12 until we kick off in 89 days in Ireland. Kansas State, Iowa State, we are looking forward to it. We're going to have an awesome coverage, and we might have some interviews this summer. I don't know. We're going to try. We're going to try to maybe bring some guests on this show. We'll see what we can do. No promises, but we do what we can. We love college football here. If you guys love college football, subscribe to the channel. ShopNoRivals.com. Use the code PTFS. My name is Jake. As always, appreciate my brother Justin joining us. We will be back to cover you guys more football this summer. Until then, it always is and it always will be. Go Cyclones.